Oh, hello there. Yes, well, it didn't rain. Anyway, yesterday I was somewhat intrigued as I sat at home trying to, well, write stuff by a piece by Allison Pearson in the Telegraph, which was mentioned on GB News. This idea that she, like Lee Anderson, wants her country back, and they interviewed Mike Parry and Stephen Pound, who, oddly, for guys that are about 10 years older than me, wanted to go back to the 1950s when they were 6 and their mum looked after them and everything was lovely. Yes, indeed. Yes, Mike Parry, a man that looks like he hasn't actually had a bath since his mum last did it in 1958. Indeed, yes. But, of course, these people want to go back to an imaginary past. Of course they do, when people looked after them and everything was lovely. However, what they've done recently, of course, in their latter career, is persuade the rest of us that we should go down this particular route. So we arrive here. But obviously they mustn't be to blame. Allison mustn't be to blame. It must be, well, as far as I can make out, me. I think it's my fault that we're here now, which is a bit odd because I never persuaded anyone to vote for this particular road. Anyway, let's unpack what Allison has to say in the Telegraph. It's rather distasteful, so it's worthwhile quoting some of it. Anyway, the piece is, I know why Britain is so miserable. We're not allowed to be proud of our country. You may notice this, Alison writes every couple of days in the Telegraph, all those things she's not allowed to do, which is a bit strange. Now, in my job, I'm not allowed to do vast amounts of things, often because of people like Allison who have put restrictions on what I can do. But in this case, she's not allowed to do things, oddly. Yes, the UK has become prey to a parasitic shadow culture that accuses us, not me, of bigotry simply for holding core British beliefs. Yes, core British beliefs. She doesn't actually say what they are. Might help her out at the end there. Yes, anyway, let's unpack some of the paragraphs that she's put, because it is quite actually distasteful, because basically what she's saying is that people like me, that have worked for 40 years, an awful lot of it in public service, and, figured I've done my bit for, well, king and country as it is now, but apparently I'm just a parasite. I don't think Alison knows very much about parasites. Might come back to that one. The feeling has been growing for quite some time. There is a sad, wistful kind of unspoken grief that our nation has been abducted by aliens. Not the best use of language there, Alison, in bearing in mind the big Tory I'm a donor and I want my contract story there is out there, who are hostile to its history and traditions, who pretty much despise everything we love about Britain, and who work through any means possible, except democracy, to change and subvert it. Everything is bad about this country, or so they claim, apart from its ability to provide generous fans for their cruelly oppressed lives and rich material for their grievances. Yes, which apart from the whole irony-free zone about a Telegraph person writing that, is so full, isn't it, of victimhood, which of course does make up a lot of what people like Allison and Mike and the rest of them want to feel. They, having created this world and persuaded us that it was the best of all possible worlds, have now decided that we're at fault for following them. Yes, anyway, it's nice to be an alien, isn't it? An alien in my own land. I mean, if she doesn't mean me, does she mean other people that are of a different colour to me? Because, after all, that's the type of thing we find ourselves thinking, isn't it, if we're on the same side as Lee Anderson, a man who's a racist, which Allison seems to be in sympathy with. I don't know. It's not actually made very clear, but it's sure as hell hinted at, isn't it? Yes, moving on. It reminds me of those parasites scientists have discovered that hijack their host's brain and body. Apparently such manipulation can take several forms. For instance, suicide of the host. Well underway in the UK, the Church of England is starving parishes to death whilst lavishing £1 billion on slavery reparations. See also the RAF discriminating against white males, traditionally rather reliable defenders of our nation against her enemies. Yes, indeed. All them white people that are victims, yes. Once again, with so many people starving in Gaza, it's perhaps not the best choice of language there. But never mind, yeah. There's all of those stout British religious institutions that when I was growing up meant England. The church, the RAF, dagger, 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 Uchtung, Spitfire, etc. But now, apparently, they're not. No, apparently, they're not right for Allison because of, as far as I can make out, things that I've done. Yes, another method is decreasing our fear of predators so that host gets eaten. The universities in bed with the Chinese who nick our intellectual property spring to mind. And then there's making the host defend or nurture the invader. Think cuckoos. You can come up with examples, I'm sure. Yes, I can think up an enormously large number of metaphors with individuals in and around the sort of circles that Allison lives in that are cuckoos, those creatures that simply bark orders at the rest of us and demand to be fed over and over and over again, whilst at the same time treating us like dirt. Not very much of a metaphor there. Or indeed universities, because of course Allison was rather keen on universities being businesses. How else are they going to compete in the global market? And here they are competing in the global market and acting like businesses. And Allison doesn't like that, because having created this world, she doesn't like it, and it can't be her fault, can it? Perhaps their leaders haven't yet. Oh, sorry. This is about other people's. Yes, perhaps their leaders haven't yet let people holding views incompatible with their values into their countries, with millions of them being a burden on hard-working taxpayers who get called bigot if they dare to admit a squeak of disquiet. Yes, indeed, this is the news, of course, that Britain comes very, very low in terms of being a happy nation. Perhaps their politicians had the foresight to build enough houses and sewers, hospitals and nuclear power stations to cope with the rapid demographic change that people never voted for. Come back to that. Or perhaps they never permitted rapid demographic change in the first place, knowing it would strain the social fabric until finally it unravelled. Yes, indeed. But of course, Allison was very, very keen on all of those kind of free trade agreements that we used to have back in the EU days under, for example, Margaret Thatcher, because she didn't mind it then, because it was the right-wing thing to do, wasn't it, of course. And this government, which, remember, we had to vote for because the other lot would have, invested in infrastructure in an enormously large amount. But now, oddly, we don't have any investment in infrastructure, and it's all wrong, and it's all our fault because we, or particularly me, I feel, did the wrong thing. Yes, and as for housing, from a middle-class woman, I'm just going to leave that one hanging, yeah? If ever I think again I hear a Tory complaining bitterly about the state of housing in the UK, I will probably emit a squeak of disquiet. Indeed. Anyway, moving on, of course, to the real culprits at fault here. Not an incompetent government of 14 years that pursued corrupt policies which basically impoverished vast sections of the population. Oh no, not a government that we had to vote for that effectively have been incapable of doing anything in their time other than make excuses and blaming certain sections of society. Talking of which, they knew they could never steal our country from us by fair and open means, I think. You see, people like me who've just gone about our ordinary lives, living our own experiences and forming our own opinions, right? Okay, we can't win. We can't win. So therefore, magically, what I'm doing in my life is subverting her world and her values. Not quite sure how I managed to do that. Presumably it's because I work in education, and therefore that's the reason why young people are bad, lazy, vote Labour, trans, whatever. They're just all useless because they weren't born in the 1950s. Not like those stout fellows like Mike and Steve, eh? Yeah, the ones we need to look up to. Yeah, the ones that are always right, especially when it comes to Boris Johnson and voting for the right party. Taxpayers' cash was thrown at lobbyists, even extremists who pushed ideas that were not recognised by their government and were a dangerous affront to common sense. Oh yes, the beauties of common sense. We see it all the time, don't we? we, with like, the Tufton Street lot that Allison's very keen on. Yeah, always giving us common sense. Just look at Liz Truss, for example. The NHS spends £40 million a year, enough to pay the salaries of 1,150 nurses, on woke initiatives such as calling a pregnant woman a birthing person. Yes, because that's being inclusive and that's not rejecting certain sections of society, Alison. That's the point at which the majority of people have actually arrived by now. Yeah, we don't simply ignore women that want to be called Ms. anymore. We don't have those kind of hang-ups because we've moved on as a society. Yeah, you will now see MS and even MX on a form. Is that wokeness gone too far? Are we spending too much money on that extra bit of ink? Because I don't think that's the primary problem around funding in the NHS. But of course, if you don't want to fund the NHS and you simply want to sell it off to your mates, then that's what you're going to bitch about, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, who agrees with that? Well, just said so. Third-party providers get rich selling diversive critical race theory propaganda to schools. No, they don't. Nobody gets rich doing that because there's no such thing as critical race theory being taught in British schools. It's a complete lie. Alison, as an ex-teacher, couldn't hack it, eh, Alison? There we go, eh? Yep, couldn't really hack that one, but still going to pontificate to me about things that I know absolutely in my heart do not exist. But never mind, eh? Yes, that's the reason why there are so many potholes. People getting rich out of critical race theory. Yeah, it's the reason why there's so much strife in society. It's why we have a rising crime rate. Yes, critical race theory pamphlets in a school, which don't exist. Aliens and parasites in our midst. Oh, weak-minded executives who thought it would be a win-win to bolster their company's woke credentials allowed a radical politicised minority to use them to influence the behaviour of the majority. And once again we arrive at the comprehensive irony-free zone. Yes, indeed, radical extremists who are just allowed to spout stuff into the body politic to the detriment of us all. Now, parasites, Alison, since you don't seem to know, are the most prolific form of life on Earth because whenever life gets tough, organisms, no matter who they are, no matter what they are, will choose the line of least resistance, and therefore parasitism is the line of least resistance. So, Alison, Stephen, and hairy non-bath guy have simply chosen the path of least resistance, and yet you'll notice that they are complaining about me, the person that hasn't chosen the path of least resistance. I've been a teacher for over 20 years. I'm the last one out of my class that graduated back in 2004. There aren't any more. I'm it. I'm still here. I'm still doing my job with these people creating laws above my head, making my life hard. And I get called an alien and a parasite, and I get told that I am responsible for the way that we are. I don't think I am, Alison. That's the kindest way that I can put that. Anyway, I look forward to her blaming others tomorrow once again because her life isn't perfect enough. Maybe I should work harder. You certainly should. Alien. Parasite.